President is defending himself in an interview overnight, weighing in on a range of topics, including the prospect of impeachment. President Trump defiant, telling Reuters in a new interview he's confident he will.
We're entering into completely uncharted territory now, something that hasn't happened in American history. We're talking about the 25th Amendment, cabinet members actively discussing whether the president is fit to remain in office, and the possibility of removing a sitting president not through impeachment and Senate conviction, but through the 25th Amendment itself. According to multiple sources, leaks, and insider reports coming out of Washington right now, this is actually being discussed and is on the table. Multiple cabinet officials, 8 or more, are in active conversations about invoking Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. That's the part that allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office and effectively remove him from power. Trump knows about it. Trump is concerned about it. Trump has been posting about it in ways that show his awareness of the risks. Trump is purging more people he suspects of disloyalty. Trump is showing signs of paranoia about it, and the whole executive branch feels like it's in a state of chaos as tensions rise. But before we go any further, let's be honest. You can't really trust the mainstream media anymore to give you the full picture without their own spin, which is exactly why platforms like this exist, to bring real stories, real context, and no corporate bias. On the international front, Donald Trump has said that talks are going well in negotiations involving Iran. Iran has pushed back on that claim once again, denying substantive progress. The focal point remains the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran holds significant leverage in this conflict. They essentially maintain control over this critical waterway, and it's having a massive impact on global oil flows, shipping routes, and economic stability across the region and beyond. Trump mentioned giving them a 10-day period after they reportedly asked for 7. Critics might say that's poor negotiating, but Trump framed it as generosity, noting they had provided some concessions on ships, 8 ships discussed in prior talks. He said he extended it to 10 days because they gave him those ships, and they were apparently thankful for the extra time. When pressed on whether either side can be trusted as truthful at this point, the answer is complicated. No one side has a monopoly on credibility here. On one hand, you have Donald Trump projecting confidence in the negotiations. On the other, Iran denies asking for any pause and insists no real talks are advancing. Reading the tea leaves, the situation is tense, with both parties posturing for domestic audiences while the stakes, potential military escalation, economic disruption, and regional instability, could not be higher. The Strait of Hormuz is a choke point for a huge portion of the world's oil supply, so any disruption there ripples through energy markets, inflation, and global trade. Think about what this domestic discussion means in the broader picture. We're not just talking about impeachment anymore, the normal constitutional process that requires House action and a 2/3 Senate vote to convict and remove. We're talking about something more immediate, his own cabinet potentially turning against him, the very people he appointed, the ones who worked directly under him in the administration, saying they no longer believe this guy is fit to be president. They might see him as mentally unfit, abusing power, or simply unable to handle the duties anymore. That's a different kind of threat because the 25th Amendment doesn't need Senate approval, no lengthy trial, no supermajority. It just requires the vice president plus a majority of the cabinet, typically at least 8 of the 15 principal officers, to declare the president unfit, and then he's out. The vice president steps in as acting president right away. Only later can the president contest it, triggering a congressional vote to potentially reinstate him, but that process itself would be messy and unprecedented in this context. Trump is reportedly terrified of this scenario. According to those close to the situation, he's been warning aides that they're trying to 25th him, telling them to lock things down or face consequences. He's paranoid, scared, and responding by purging more people he views as disloyal. He's trying to consolidate power around those he trusts most, but it's not fully working because cabinet members are seeing the broader picture. They're witnessing contempt rulings from courts, lawyer walkouts, impeachment efforts, the Epstein scandal with its lingering questions, and document releases that keep resurfacing ties and allegations, staff purges that create fear, off-the-cuff comments that raise eyebrows, like references that get labeled as the piggy comment in some circles, and overall chaos. They see a president who appears to be losing control, and they're asking themselves tough questions. Do we really want to go down with this ship? Do we want our names and careers tied to this level of dysfunction? Do we truly believe he's fit for the highest office? Some of them are starting to say no. Some are whispering that he needs to go. Some are seriously considering whether invoking the 25th Amendment is the responsible path. Vice President J.D. Vance has put out statements denying any such action, insisting the president is fully in command and there's no movement under the 25th. But insiders call that damage control. They're saying Vance might be lying or at least downplaying the internal pressure. Vance could be terrified himself. If the 25th gets invoked, he becomes president, but that might come with accusations of betrayal from Trump's core base. Maybe he's protecting Trump. Maybe he's trying to hold the line amid building pressure. But the cabinet is talking. The FBI is investigating aspects of conduct, including potential violations tied to court orders or scandals. There are criminal referrals floating around, contempt rulings, impeachment articles, and the 25th Amendment is being discussed seriously, which is extraordinary. It's a sign of a government in deep crisis. To understand this fully, let's break down what the 25th Amendment actually is and how it works, because most people aren't familiar with the details beyond headlines. The 25th Amendment was ratified after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy to clarify issues of presidential succession and disability. It has 4 sections. Sections 1 through 3 deal with succession when the president dies, resigns, or voluntarily transfers power temporarily due to illness or surgery. But Section 4 is the controversial one, the emergency tool for when the president is unable to discharge his duties but won't or can't step aside himself. It says that the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments, the cabinet, or another body designated by Congress can transmit a written declaration to the leaders of Congress stating that the president is unable to serve. Once that happens, the vice president immediately becomes acting president and the powers transfer. The president can then contest it by sending his own declaration saying he's able and ready. If he does, Congress has to decide within a tight timeline, assembling within 48 hours if not in session, and voting within 21 days. It takes a 2/3 vote in both the House and Senate to keep the president out. Otherwise, he resumes power. It's designed for clear cases of incapacity, like severe illness, injury, or mental unfitness, where the inner circle sees the president can't function, but he refuses to acknowledge it. It's never been used for removal under Section 4 in American history. There have been close calls or discussions, like after the Reagan assassination attempt or during Nixon's final days, but it has never gone all the way to ousting a president against his will. That makes any serious talk of it now historic and potentially explosive. Right now, according to the reports and leaks, cabinet members are weighing whether the current president meets that standard of unfitness. They're looking at his conduct, contempt rulings where courts have found probable cause for violations of orders, especially in immigration and deportation cases involving the Alien Enemies Act. They're seeing lawyer walkouts from the administration as legal teams face ethical pressures or disagree with directives. They're noting defiance of court orders that has led to contempt proceedings. The Epstein scandal keeps resurfacing with massive document releases, millions of pages revealing old ties, unverified allegations, and questions about how much was known or covered up, even if no direct charges have stuck to the president himself. Staff purges, where dozens of people get fired amid paranoia over leaks. Public comments that come across as erratic or inflammatory, especially around sensitive foreign policy like threats involving Iran. And they're asking, is this president mentally and emotionally fit to remain in office? Is he capable of discharging the duties without constant chaos? Is he too willing to push boundaries of law, impulse, and stability? Some cabinet members are reportedly concluding that the answer is no. They see a pattern of behavior that suggests unfitness, paranoia leading to mass firings, rage-filled posts on social media, lack of impulse control, and a willingness to challenge or ignore judicial checks. The bar for the 25th is different from impeachment. Impeachment requires proving high crimes and misdemeanors, a political process with House impeachment and Senate trial needing 2/3 to convict. It's about wrongdoing. The 25th is about capacity, whether the president can do the job mentally, physically, or otherwise. There's an argument that the current combination of factors meets that threshold: the visible chaos, the legal battles, the internal fear. But invoking it would be extremely controversial and unprecedented. No cabinet has ever pulled the trigger on Section 4 to remove a sitting president. It would trigger a massive constitutional crisis. The president could immediately contest it, forcing Congress into a quick vote. Republicans in Congress might rally to defend him, arguing that even if they have doubts, it's not the cabinet's role to play kingmaker. That's for elections or impeachment. Some might say the cabinet is overstepping into a political coup rather than addressing genuine incapacity. It would divide the country further, spark lawsuits, media firestorms, and accusations of betrayal. Cabinet members know this. They're weighing pros and cons privately, the risk to their own reputations, the potential for stability versus the backlash, the fear that staying loyal means going down with a sinking ship. Trump's response is making things harder. He's purging staff, reports of 40 or more firings in waves as he hunts for leakers and disloyalty. That sends a chilling message to the cabinet. Even loyalty might not save you if paranoia kicks in. If he fires lower-level people so aggressively, would he target secretaries of state, defense, or others who show hesitation? Cabinet members are reportedly walking on eggshells, unable to focus fully on their jobs because they're managing internal fear rather than policy. That dysfunction feeds the case for the 25th even more. How can the government function if top officials are paralyzed by the atmosphere at the top? There are 4 key things to understand about this 25th Amendment threat and the apparent cabinet-level unease. First, it reveals the depth of the crisis inside the administration. Cabinet members are supposed to be the loyal executors of the president's agenda. When they're instead privately debating his fitness and a constitutional removal tool, that's a sign of an administration in freefall. Loyalty has eroded to the point where self-preservation and institutional stability are competing with allegiance. Second, this didn't come out of nowhere. It's the accumulation of recent events, the Epstein files releases that keep dragging up uncomfortable associations and unverified claims, even if denied, aggressive staff purges creating a climate of fear, public comments that fuel perceptions of instability, contempt findings from judges over defied orders in high-stakes areas like immigration, lawyer departures signaling internal legal fractures, and impeachment pushes in the House that, while perhaps symbolic or stalled, add to the pressure. Cabinet members have watched all this unfold and concluded that the pattern points to someone no longer fully in control. Third, this puts enormous pressure on Vice President J.D. Vance. Vance has denied any 25th movement, projecting unity. But he's in a no-win spot. If invoked, he becomes acting president, potentially facing accusations from the MAGA base of stabbing Trump in the back or seizing power prematurely. That could torpedo his own future political prospects, especially as a frontrunner for 2028 in many eyes. So Vance is likely working overtime to discourage any such talk, reassuring cabinet members to stick together and ride it out. Yet as pressure builds from leaks, investigations, and external calls, even from some unexpected conservative voices questioning the direction, he might find it harder to hold the line indefinitely. Fourth, this creates a dual-track constitutional crisis. Impeachment is grinding along in Congress, with articles filed and debates over high crimes. Simultaneously, the 25th discussion simmers in the executive branch. Courts are issuing rulings against administration actions. The FBI continues probes into potential obstructions or related matters. You have multiple branches and agencies moving in ways that converge on the presidency. House impeachment votes, potential Senate trial, cabinet whispers, judicial contempt, federal investigations. It's a perfect storm where each element amplifies the others, making removal through one path or another feel increasingly plausible to some observers. What does all this mean in practical terms? It means the president is facing serious threats to his tenure from multiple angles at once. His own cabinet is reportedly discussing removal. The 25th is on the table in ways it hasn't been before in his time in office. The FBI's work adds legal jeopardy. He's faced impeachment efforts, contempt risks from courts, lawyers quitting, approval ratings taking hits amid the chaos. Key voter groups, including women in some polls, showing dissatisfaction, even some Republicans expressing private nervousness. The government feels like it's operating in complete disarray, with purges, paranoia, and power consolidation attempts that seem to be backfiring by scaring off talent and breeding more distrust. Strategically, the president's approach of demanding absolute loyalty and firing perceived threats has created a feedback loop of fear. People around him are scared of what comes next. If disagreement leads to exile, then honest advice dries up, bad decisions compound, and the case for unfitness grows. This echoes in some ways the final days of the Nixon administration, where advisors and cabinet members lost confidence, meetings discussed resignation, and the president ultimately stepped down to avoid worse humiliation. The difference here is that this president is unlikely to go quietly. He's expected to fight every step, posting fiery denunciations of witch hunts, deep state coups, and enemies trying to steal the presidency. That response could accelerate the very dynamics it aims to stop. More division, more leaks, more cabinet members concluding that stability requires action. If the 25th were invoked, it could dramatically shift the impeachment landscape. A removed president via cabinet action means the vice president takes over immediately. The Senate would then face questions about continuing an impeachment trial against someone no longer in office. Does it make sense to convict a former president, or does the process lose its urgency? It could lead to quicker resolutions or reshape political calculations heading into future elections. The entire trajectory of the administration could pivot overnight. We're looking at a situation where the president faces interconnected crises: impeachment from Congress, potential 25th from the cabinet, criminal scrutiny from the FBI, court contempt, internal staff revolts via walkouts and purges, crashing public support in key areas, and an administration descending into paranoia. Each feeds the next. The purges create more leaks and fear. The legal losses fuel more calls for removal. The foreign policy tensions, like the Iran negotiations and Strait of Hormuz brinkmanship, add external pressure that makes domestic dysfunction even more dangerous. Something has to give eventually. Whether through one mechanism or a combination, the possibility of the president not finishing the term looms larger in these discussions. For the country, this is troubling. A government in freefall at the top while it still has to function, passing bills, managing foreign policy, protecting national security, handling economic issues. How do you run effective diplomacy when the leader is distracted by survival fights? How do agencies coordinate when top officials fear purges? How does the cabinet deliberate policy when some members are weighing whether to declare their boss unfit? The answer is that it can't function optimally. That's why some argue the 25th might ultimately be invoked not as a coup or power grab, but as a desperate measure to restore order, allow the government to operate without constant fear, and make decisions based on national interest rather than avoiding triggering rage or paranoia. Here we stand at a point in American history that's truly unprecedented. A president facing active impeachment articles. A president whose own cabinet is reportedly discussing his removal via the 25th. A president under various investigations and contempt findings. A president whose legal team has seen defections. A president with approval numbers hitting lows amid scandals and chaos. A president appearing to lose grip on the machinery of government. We're heading toward constitutional waters no one has navigated before. The Senate will deliberate impeachment. The cabinet might edge closer to action. Courts and the FBI will keep pressing. The president will likely continue pushing back with firings, statements, and power plays. At some point soon, one of these forces may succeed in altering the leadership. Buckle up, because this crisis is reshaping American politics in real time. It will be studied in history books for generations as a test of constitutional resilience, the limits of loyalty, and the balance between executive power and institutional safeguards. The stakes involve not just one administration, but the stability of the republic itself, how it handles internal division, legal challenges, foreign threats like the Iran situation, and the question of when unfitness becomes too much for even the inner circle to ignore. The coming weeks and months will determine whether the system holds or fractures further, and what kind of precedent gets set for future presidencies. This isn't normal politics. It's a moment where the guardrails are being tested like never before, and the outcome will echo far beyond Washington.